This is Kent Hance, best storyteller in Texas. I have with me today Congressman Jodey Arrington. He's been a guest before. He has 2 degrees, a bachelor's and a master's from Texas Tech. He worked for Governor Bush when in his appointment office when George W. Bush was governor of the state of Texas. Then he worked for him at the White House, was in personnel and selecting people for important positions. He also worked at FDIC and worked for Don Powell, who's from Amarillo and one of the most effective persons that's ever been involved in state government. And Congressman, what we're calling to talk to you about today, and it's kind of a mouthful here, is the Medicare Multicancer Early Detection and Detection Screening Coverage Act. And that if they put that on somebody's door to be in charge of it, that they'll have to get French doors. They'll have to get double doors, I guess. And but you passed that bill, and you started off. It started a little slow, and everyone kind of doubted you. I didn't, because I know that persistence is part of your personality, and that that bill finally was passed and signed by the president, and it's going to do more to detect early cancer than anything we've ever had. And I just wanted to interview you about it. And this is something that everyone in the state, we had 39,000 people listen in March, and we want them to all know what you did. And tell me about the background on the bill and when you got started and you started looking for co-sponsors. You finally wound up with a bunch of co-sponsors, but it wasn't easy at first.
Well, Chancellor, it's an honor to be with you, and you are indeed the greatest storyteller on earth, and I can vouch after 10 years of being your vice chancellor, there was very few times where there was a leadership principle or a life lesson that didn't have a story, whether it was from your time as a member of Congress or the state Senate or just back home in Dimmitt, America. And I'm just grateful that I got a chance to serve and work for such a great West Texas leader. And I learned a lot like persistence and how to work with people and try to find, mutually beneficial outcomes. And that's what you had to do, and what you have to do in any endeavor in Congress is make sure you can get a win-win and find a good partner. And I'll start by giving credit to my Democrat colleague from Alabama, Terry Sewell. She's from a rural part of Alabama, so we had the challenges that country communities face that are unique to our communities relative to urban and suburban areas, and we serve on Ways and Means together. But I think most importantly for her, and what was driving her, was she lost her mom to pancreatic cancer about 4 or 5 years ago. And I presented her with the opportunity to name this after her mother. And when you read about what an incredible lady she was the first city councilwoman on the city council in Selma, Alabama. And you can just tell by knowing Terry Sewell that her mom was an impressive lady. You read her resume and all she did to contribute to her community and great causes. So it starts with a good partner. It took 5 years, but the other thing is people understand the insidious disease of cancer and how it destroys our friends and loved ones. I mean, 2 million people in this country are diagnosed with cancer or some form of cancer every year, and 1,700 Americans die a day from cancer. So it's the second leading cause of death, and we lose over 500,000 Americans to this horrible disease. So people want to fight and win the battle or the war against cancer, as they say. You can't do that if you can't detect it early on. The screening today, Mr. Chancellor, it can catch about 5 different cancers only. This new technology can detect over 40. And most of those cancers get through the physical screenings or X-ray and other technologies of today. And you get people in late stage cancer, and it's really hard to treat them, and the risk of death is far greater. And then as budget chairman, this isn't just about the numbers, but if you can get it early, you can save lives, you can improve quality of life, and you can save money. A third of our national debt's being driven by healthcare costs. And again, most of that is chronic disease in later stages. So we just pushed, we worked, we got the most popular, most supported bill in the United States Congress for the last 2 years. In fact, in the House, we had 338 co-sponsors, and in the Senate, we had 68 out of 100, 35 Democrats, 32 Republicans. So the main thing is we're making a difference, and people will live longer, families will be touched, and we'll actually start bending the curve on the healthcare spending in this country that's pushing us ever closer to a debt crisis.
Congressman, one of the things that explain what they do, they draw blood, and from that they run tests and determine if you've got early stages or whatever to allow them to start treating you. Is that right?
That's correct. There are different technologies, and we want more to come online so there's greater competition for patients, which will drive the cost further down. But yes, just a little drop of blood and a rapid test can reveal, like I said, over 40 cancers. And we had the help of public figures like Dak Prescott because his mom had cancer. And, you know, these folks, if their loved ones could avail themselves of this type of diagnostic innovation, it might have saved their loved ones' lives, and they get that. But the seniors on Medicare couldn't access it because it wasn't on the formulary, which means they're going to pay out of pocket. They're going to pay $2,500, $3,000. Well, most of our seniors on a fixed income can't afford it. Now it's covered by Medicare, and now we've increased the access. We're going to improve healthcare outcomes, and like I said, we're going to start reining in the spending that we can use to make sure that Medicare, Social Security, and other programs are sustainable into the future, because right now, sadly enough, they're not. So it's a win. It's a triple threat, and it's a win all the way around.
Well, you've done a great job in that. And, you know, you look at your job as chairman of the Budget Committee makes you one of the most powerful guys in Washington. And the people in West Texas that elect you are very proud of you. And that you look at you want to touch just a little on what you're doing to fight the deficits out in the front years that we've tried to get under control. And I'd like for you to touch on that just a little.
Well, I think it's one of the biggest threats to the future of our country. It won't just wreck our economy. It will compromise our national security. In fact, I think it already is, because we spend more just to service the debt, Chancellor, just to pay the interest on our debt, $39 trillion in debt. We spend over $1 trillion, which is more than we spend on all of national defense for the greatest country in history. And it's now what we spend on interest has exceeded Medicare payments. So we're crowding out the ability to fund our national priorities, and we're also putting at risk our reserve currency, meaning, you know, we are the safest place to park your money. And so it's easier for America to borrow money. And so we get a sense of false confidence that we can just borrow forever and there'll be no consequence. But that's not the case. In fact, today we're struggling with inflation in part because of the massive spending under the previous administration. But to be fair, under Republicans and Democrats alike, namely because of these entitlement programs or these safety nets for seniors. I mean, think about this, Chancellor. 10,000 baby boomers are retiring every day, getting on Social Security and Medicare. We keep increasing our benefits and the promises we're making, but we're not able to keep up with it financially. So we're borrowing in a $7 trillion budget for the federal government, $2 trillion. That's going to almost double in 10 years, and you're going to have about 60 cents on every dollar that we borrow not go to a soldier or a sailor or to a senior for their safety net sustainability or to highways and byways. It's going to just be interest. It's a killer. So I can tell you, since your well-trained West Texas protege has been placed in this very important position, I take it very seriously, the budget chairmanship. We have rallied our people around the battle cry from the great quote of a founding father, James Madison. He said, "A public debt is a public curse, and the worst of its kind, because it will destroy the country from the inside," which is where most nations, most great empires are destroyed. And so since we've been placed in this leadership role, and since Republicans got control of the House, we have kept discretionary funding, which means basically operating monies that support the government, defense, and non-defense. We've kept it flat. So relative to inflation, we've saved almost $500 billion there. And then in the big, beautiful bill, people think that we just cut taxes and we did some things to help open up domestic energy production. No, we cut more waste and fraud, twice as much as this nation has ever cut, as any Congress has ever cut. And by doing both of those things and getting the economy growing again and having this president have reciprocal trade, which is bringing in some revenue, CBO just reported that the deficit is down by $138 billion. And that hasn't happened in almost a decade. So I'm not saying we're out of the woods yet, and I'm not saying that debt crisis doesn't loom large on the horizon. I'm saying you got to walk before you run. Heck, you got to crawl before you walk in this place when it comes to reining in spending. We're doing the things that we need to do to save this country from fiscal collapse, and I'm super proud of what we're doing, and I think our kids are going to benefit from it if we can keep doing what we've been doing.
That's exactly right. That with the cuts and spending, that it gets away and they'll add this and add that, and then all of a sudden you're back in a jam. But I think the bill that you passed last year was really a step in the right direction to cut out waste and fraud, and they're doing so many things. The problem they had in Minnesota with the Medicare and Medicaid primarily fraud, and also aid to dependent children, that millions and billions of dollars that should never have been spent. And
that's right.
They were out there pushing it, and that there was no downside. And right. They're now prosecuting people for that, and so there's certainly some upside.
Well, Chancellor, I think what gets people spun up, and rightfully so, who work hard and pay their taxes, and they look up and that we're just leaking like a sieve with fraudsters and unaccountable politicians at the local and state level, like we witnessed and are witnessing in states like Minnesota, but also Medicaid fraud in New York. Hospice in LA has been getting a lot of attention. Think about this. The number of hospice outfits that started up over the last few years has gone up exponentially. In fact, LA County has 1,800 hospice organizations. That's more than all of Texas. And they found out that half of them, 900, were just complete frauds. And the GAO, the Government Accountability Office, they project that anywhere from $250 to $500 billion a year is fraudulent spending in the federal government. Dr. Oz's people came over the other day. They said in CMS, which is Medicaid, Medicare, they said they saved in just March $2.5 billion, and they think it's about $100 billion year round. So this is real money, not just in Plainview, Texas, and Dimmitt. This is real money that could, again, support safety net programs that we need into the future, could fund our troops and support our military when we're in conflict, and to help prepare us for future wars and future readiness. So it's look, I'm very gratified that the country has turned its attention to this. I'm embarrassed that so much is wasted and there's so little accountability. But one of the things, Chancellor, that we put in the big, beautiful bill, in addition to saying if you're in this country illegally, you cannot draw down social services that are paid for by U.S. taxpayers. But we also said, hey, states, you got to have skin in the game. And on food stamps, if the improper payment rate is over a certain percentage, the state has to pony up and participate in paying for that. And that's going to change behavior, because unfortunately too many states are spending this money recklessly and without safeguards because it's not their money. Yep. And so we got to make sure they're participating.
Anytime it's easy for people to be very lenient and very easy to deal with when they're spending somebody else's money. You know, say, that's my money, and they give it out. Your bill passed, and I noticed, I thought one thing that was great, that you had something like the vote in committee was like 41-0, or, and so people can see this will save us some money in the long run and is a good investment. But President signed it, and did he have a ceremony, or did he just sign it and it went on into effect?
Yeah, he signed it. We had so much going on. I really was hoping we'd do a ceremony, but we're working on trying to do one, post facto, so we can celebrate it and also let seniors know that it's there now for them, and we can start getting people signed up for this important, test. On
the FDA, they will start this when some of the methods of the detection are approved by the FDA. Do you have any insight on when that's going to happen, or how close you're having that to being a working part of this legislation?
Well, FDA has, they've approved some tests already, and then some are in the pipeline that haven't been, proved efficacious in Plainview. That means it works, and that it doesn't, that there's no downside to it. Diagnostic tests like this, they shouldn't be that difficult, right? I mean, this isn't like we're trying to do some, immunotherapeutic, which is also cutting edge treatment for people who have cancer. But so I expect that we'll have, now that it's covered by Medicare, and these companies know there's a stream of revenue there from the government, so there's this level of certainty. I think you're going to see all kinds of competition and all kinds of new tests, new diagnostics in this same space. And so you're just going to see the cost of these tests, like you see with cell phones and anything else. The cost is a little high at first, and then it comes down with the advent of more and more competing products.
That's right. I've read a lot of editorials about this legislation, and they go on to say that what has happened with the people that will be affected, it's given them new hope that there can be early detection, and it'll open the door to a new era in the fight against cancer. But this is one of the strong things. Prevention is what we're trying to do to solve the debt problem and everything else like that. So, Congressman, we really appreciate the leadership you put in and the time you put in. I know you're leaving at the end of this year, leaving Congress, and we're sad, the people that you represent in the 19th District, sad to lose you, but we know you'll come back in some form and help people in public service. And you got a wonderful family, and those kids are what ages now?
15, 13, and 11.
And you need to spend a little more time with them, and you chose that. And also, you'd said that you believed in term limitations, and you put a term limitation on yourself. And you're to be commended for that, and we certainly salute you. Is there anything that you want to talk about before we close out today?
Well, I mean, as you mentioned, that this is the last year in my fifth term, which will be a total of 10 years. I think that's enough. I mean, it's enough to let someone else come in and take it from here. I do need to be with my family. You know what a sacrifice it is. Most people don't. You don't talk about it because you don't want to be a whiner, but the reality is our spouses are the ones, picking up the slack. And I got a little window left to engage my kids in a deeper, more meaningful way, at least with more time. But let me tell you, it's been the honor of a lifetime, and it has been a labor of love. It's been a dream for me to every day. I got to tell you, every day, the only job that ever came close to putting on the West Texas jersey and doing battle in the congressional arena for our country, and to be a voice for, our hardworking, God-fearing, freedom-loving West Texans, is when I was working at Texas Tech with you. And it was like Christmas every day to wake up, go to campus, work with a guy that transformed Texas Tech. I tell people I wouldn't want to be the guy to follow Kent Hance ever. I mean, what we were able to do under your leadership to increase enrollment, record levels, increase research, record levels, increase the endowment and fundraising, record levels. It's phenomenal. And all I got to say is, a wise man once said, some things are better caught than taught. And while I learned a lot at Texas Tech, I caught a whole lot more from a fellow Red Raider named Kent Hance. And life's been all the better for me. And more importantly, I've been all the better for representing West Texas here in Washington because of it. So I want to thank you publicly for all that you did to invest in me. And I'm super proud to call you my friend. And I'm thankful to the people of West Texas to let me do this, for 10 years.
Well, we enjoyed having you, and it was a great plus for all of West Texas, but also the entire nation. Always, one of the things that you learned from me, one of your favorite mottos that you still tell people in government is push, push, push. If you're trying to get something done, you've got to push it every day, and because if you don't, it'll never get done. And I think back to some of the assignments I gave you that were difficult, and you'd pull a rabbit out of the hat when you had to. And what was it that I had you looking for? A meteor or something?
Meteorite.
Meteorite. Yeah.
Somebody from New Mexico. I guess they were either a graduate or they were the spouse of a former faculty member at Tech. And they called you and said, we donated a meteorite to the school, but we'd like to get that back for family purposes. I don't know. You were sending me things, every day to chase and run down, and you believed in customer service. You believed in a sense of urgency, and like nobody else I've ever worked for. But you also believed that there was no mission that was impossible. And there was a phrase you had about if there was a man with a gun who was standing outside your door saying, could you get the meteorite? I just want to know, would you tell the man yes or no? And if the answer is yes, then you better come up with a meteorite. And sure enough, unbelievable really to me, because I thought this was mission impossible. I quite frankly thought the person might be just crazy, but we found the dadgum meteorite and we gave it back to them. So you know what? It's like you said, there's nothing that you can't do when you push, and dream no little dreams. And the combination of those two worked for that lady. They've worked for my constituents, and they worked for Texas Tech because of the culture you create and because of your leadership.
Well, it was a lot of fun, and I always think back that meeting, you went, I don't know that's possible and everything. You got to look and everything, and I'd send you notes every day, and you found it, and we used it at the museum for a period of time. Then it was stored some other place, but you got it back to the lady whose husband found it. And so it was a win-win for everybody, just like your cancer research legislation. It's a win-win for everyone. And that's something that no one else undertook because you were going to have to go. You went to 334 members and asked them to sign the bill. And that takes a lot of time because they're not just going to let you get by with one or two sentences. I mean, you got to sell them, and you did it, and you passed it. And thanks to you and Congresswoman Sewell and also the president for signing it. It benefits everyone. We appreciate you. We'll talk to you later. Yes, sir.
Chancellor.
Yes, sir.
Chancellor, I wasn't, after finding a meteorite in a laboratory in the basement of Texas Tech, I wasn't going to let somebody tell me I couldn't pass a cancer prevention bill. You see,
that's right.
Hey, God bless you, my friend,
okay.
and thanks for the opportunity to talk about it.
Okay, talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.